San Francisco 49ers and the Chicago Bears right now. There are a couple 6.5s available on the 49ers out there. The rest of the market sitting at 7 in favor of the Niners. We have a very, very low total for today's NFL sitting at 40.5 across the board. There is one rogue 40 out there at Unibet if you want to play the over in this thing. Guys, don't need to tell you if you've been following this. Trey Lance era has begun in San Francisco for the 49ers. Not all great news for them, though, because it does look like George Kittle is going to miss this game for them. We are recording this on Friday morning, so the official injury reports are not out yet. Be sure and follow those as those start hitting in the afternoons on Fridays, because those can certainly shape how you want to get your betting card. But it does not look like Kittle is going to play here in week 1. Aggravated his groin, had to miss two practices leading into Friday. And so that's not great for I think this 49ers team in general as we move forward. If he has to miss multiple weeks, I don't think it's going to affect how I view this game in week 1 against the Chicago Bears, which I think is probably going to be the second worst team in all the NFL behind the Seattle Seahawks. So Steven, I'll start with you here. 49ers, this seemed like a fantastic teaser leg to me to take the 7 down to 1. I have multiple different legs that involve the 49ers as one of the teaser legs, taking the 7 down to the 1. And I still feel super comfortable with it. Do I want George Kittle out there for a guy that I'm basically considering and looking at as a rookie quarterback? I know he was in the league last year. I know he got a little bit of playing time, but they finally handed the keys over. I'm basically treating him as if he were a rookie. Yes, I would love for him to have George Kittle out there. I would love for him to have that security blanket. That being said, even with that not being the case, he still has Ayuk. He still has Deebo Samuel. And look, they can run the ball all day long in this Bears team, which I imagine that they will. And so I'm not worried about having all that liability on this 49ers team as we head into this one.
Combine that rain in the forecast, some wind gusting up to 30 miles per hour potentially at Soldier Field, and a complete mismatch in the trenches, whether it's the 49ers offensive line against the Bears front 7 or the Bears offensive line against the 49ers front 7. It is a really tough spot, especially for the Bears offensive line. Nick Bosa, number 7 edge rusher. The Niners are moving Eric Armstead back inside, where he had a higher pass rush grade as an interior defensive lineman than he did as an outside linebacker and pass rusher. So, and the 49ers get pressure without blitzing. We saw that all throughout the postseason last year. They had a bottom 5 blitz rate a year ago, but they pressured 24% of snaps versus only blitzing less than 20% of the time, according to Pro Football Reference. So this is a bottom 2 consensus offensive line for Chicago. It is especially bad at tackle, where they're going to have to deal with Bosa. So I think it's going to be tough with the elements. I think it's tough with the offensive line for Chicago to move the ball in this game. So really the only concern you have is Trey Lance. And if I'm picking any head coach to kind of guide a young quarterback early in his career, I'm picking Kyle Shanahan over anybody. This is a coach that we saw win a playoff game once upon a time with his quarterback throwing less than 15 times in the game. So I want to find reasons to be bullish on the 49ers. I'm not so bullish that I want to lay a touchdown on the road in week 1 with Trey Lance, but I agree with you that the teaser leg seems fine.
Adam, we take a look at this one. I mean, yes, I could sit here and just tell you all the reasons why I think that the Bears are going to be bad. I mean, we could probably talk for a whole podcast on that. But I mean, I'd rather just look at why we think that even without George Kittle in week 1, even with Trey Lance basically, taking over the reins here, as to why that I think that this is still okay for them. I mean, look, the offensive line should be fine, at least an upper half, if not an upper third offensive line for him. You kind of look, the defensive line is going to give Justin Fields and this Bears team just all kinds of hell. Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, you got Drake Jackson, Kerry Hyder. I mean, there's just tons of reasons to love what they bring on the defensive side, and they upgraded in the secondary as well, bringing in Charvarius Ward and all that. And it's just, for me, there might be reasons for us to poke holes again in the 49ers down the line. I just don't think it's here against this Bears team.
So I'm going to give you a number that almost seems impossible, but the Chicago Bears pulled this off in 2021. They were 0-5 against the spread as a home dog. You know how difficult that is to do in an NFL season, to have 5 opportunities to cover as a home dog and not hit one of them? So the point for me is not to talk about that trend from last year. The point for me is to say, if you are going to take the points with San Francisco, with Chicago here against San Francisco, you need to explain to me why. And if it's a fade of San Francisco like you're talking about, then fine. But I can't find a reason to take Chicago as the team to exploit that, as you guys have referenced. Now, I can find reason to get involved when it comes to the total in this game, and that's one that I do see a slight edge on here, playing over 40.5, which you'll see at most books. You mentioned the Rogue 40 out there at Unibet. This has a lot to me of a feel of a game that we had last year with the 49ers and the Lions last season. If you remember this game, Niners went up 31-10 at halftime, and then we had the Fightin' Dans with a furious comeback in the second half to make it interesting. And I think that's the kind of game we could be looking at here, minus the fact, of course, as Steven just mentioned, the weather could be awful, and so you don't have dome conditions involved for a team to make that kind of comeback. But I think that when we look at this game in particular, yeah, I'm not worried about any of the advanced numbers when we talk about this, and we'll talk a lot of advanced numbers as the season goes on. But what I do see here is once the reins are off Justin Fields, once the Niners have a sizable lead in this game, I think then you start to add in some of the variants of what it could look like once he gets out in space and tries to make some things happen.
Yeah, I'm with you. And listen, from an over perspective in this one, there's also the turnover factor, right? And I think that the Bears are, at least at the beginning of the season, going to be trying to figure some stuff out there. I think there'll be some turnovers, some short fields, things like that for this 49ers team. And it won't take much to get over a tiny number like 40.5.